is Painless. This is a video and blog series that I have developed for my students, but if you've stumbled upon it and it will help you, watch on. My students call me Professor Reinhardt, my friends call me Sonny, and people call me Sandra. I answer to all kinds of names, but the thing that I want you to understand is that I am passionate about helping students to become more effective writers. Today we're going to be talking about probably what is one of the most misused grammar concepts, and that is the common comma. It's actually very simple, but people seem to either overuse them or underuse them. So we're just going to take a few minutes to talk about the most common uses. One of them is actually discussed in my video sentence structure. So I encourage you to go to my blog, writingispainless.blogspot.com, and you can look for the sentence structure video and you'll find the one that deals with commas and coordinating conjunctions. But what I want to talk about now is I want to talk about some of the other common uses. The first is when you have elements in a series. So if you have words in a series, phrases in a series, 3 or more constitutes a series, and you always have a comma separating the elements of that. So it could be as simple as some nouns that you have in a sentence. In this case, I would be using a compound subject. Carol, Susan, and I. In this case, we have a series of nouns and pronouns. You would separate the elements with the comma. Now, there are some that say that you don't need this comma just before this and. I prefer it. I would prefer for my students, if you're watching this, make sure that you put that final comma because that's something that's important to me. The next is the introductory element. And the introductory element are words or phrases that introduce the sentence. It could be just one word. Nowadays, that's a common word. I don't really like it in writing, but I see it a lot, so why not? This is just a single word. It could be a couple of words like these days. It could be a phrase like to audition for the show. Whatever it is, it's considered an element, an introductory element, and you do have a comma that separates it from the actual main clause of your sentence. So that is introductory elements. The next is what we call parenthetical ideas. Parenthetical ideas are those ideas that could be offset with a parentheses, but for ease of readability, you want to use commas. It's just for your reader. Parentheses are kind of hard stops, and commas allow your sentences to flow more smoothly. But they're non-essential to the meaning of the sentence. So it could be something about, my lab, however, eats meat. I have Labrador retrievers, so I often use labs in my example. In this case, that word however in the middle of the sentence is non-essential, and it could be in parentheses, but again, for readability, you want to make sure that it's in commas. It could be an actual phrase, unexpectedly lazy. Whatever that is, if it's non-essential to the meaning, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about non-essential and essential elements in just a second, but these are words that you would offset with commas. Now, if we're talking about, and before I forget, by the way, if you go to the blog, the common uses of commas, I also have a document that outlines everything that I'm talking about, so it's in written form as well. The next is what we call the difference, what I want to talk about is the difference between essential and non-essential elements. Non-essential elements are those things that if I took it out, it's a phrase or a clause that if I took it out of my sentence, it would not change the essential meaning of my sentence, versus an essential element is something that I would have to keep there or the entire meaning of my sentence is changed. As writers, the only thing that we have to communicate are our words. That's what we have, is our words and how we use them. So you can speak to your reader by how you write. So if I had a sentence like, Carol, who lives 2 doors down, designs graphics. So in this case, the phrase that we're talking about is who lives 2 doors down. In this case, what we need to decide as a writer is this essential information? Is this phrase, who lives 2 doors down, essential to the meaning of my sentence? Or if I took it out, Carol designs graphics, would my reader understand what I'm talking about? It's really your call to determine what is essential or not essential. I would argue that it's probably not as important for you to understand that she lives 2 doors down from me. What's important is that you know that she designs graphics. On the flip side, something that is essential means that if I were to remove that phrase, the entire meaning of my sentence might change. So if I have a sentence that says, the driver who ran the red light caused the accident, the phrase, who ran the red light, I would believe would be essential because I would need you to understand which driver caused the accident. So hopefully you understand the difference between the two. If you still need clarity, again, I recommend that you go to the blog to pull up the document, but you could also comment on the blog and let me know if you need further clarification. So that's non-essential and essential elements. The next one is something that is, it's called an appositive, A-P-P-O-S-I-T-I-V-E. An appositive is a word that renames or illustrates or defines a noun that it's associated with. So if I have a sentence that says, my cousin Jane lives in Canada, in this case, the noun is cousin. This is the subject of the sentence. What Jane is doing is it is redefining, naming, illustrating who my cousin is, that it's my cousin Jane, not my cousin, whomever. In this case, this is an appositive, this word here, and you do need to offset it with commas. So if you have a word that is renaming, defining an associated noun, you do need to offset it with commas. The next two I'm not going to really talk about because I think you know this, and if you do need some clarification, find the document. That is when you use commas when you're writing dates and commas when you're writing city and state type of configuration and an address. Go to the blog. Writing is painless.blogspot.com. Look for the common uses of commas and you'll find that in the document. But the last thing I do want to talk about, the last common use of commas, is what we call either coordinating or cumulative adjectives. The first is when we have coordinating, which means that both the adjectives in the sentence modify the same noun. So if you had a sentence like small, red, wagon, both the adjective small modifies wagon and red modifies wagon. The little test for this to determine whether it's cumulative or coordinating is if you can replace the comma with the word and, the small and red wagon, or if you can reverse them, the red small wagon, then you know that you do need the comma in between the two. The next is what we call cumulative. And cumulative is when you have an adjective that's really not modifying the noun, it's actually modifying the adjective that's before it. So if we had a case of the dark blue dress, in this case, dark is not really telling us about the dress. It's really telling us about the color blue, that it is dark blue versus light blue versus sapphire blue versus sky blue. It's really an adjective that's telling me about this other adjective. And again, you use that same rule of thumb is you probably wouldn't say the dark and blue dress because again, dark is describing blue. Yes, some would argue, well, it's also describing the dress, but in this case, we're really talking about the color of the blue. And you probably wouldn't reverse them and say the blue dark dress. That doesn't, again, because the way that we're doing the modification there. What's modifying what? So the question again you ask yourself is, I need a comma if both of the adjectives modify the same noun, if one of the adjectives is actually modifying the other adjective, you do not have a comma. Those really are the most common uses of commas, and if you use them correctly, your instructors will think you are brilliant. So I encourage you as always to practice your writing, keep pen to paper, and also practice these skills, grasp them, and make them your own, and you will become more and more effective, more and more proficient, and you will discover that writing is painless. Thank you very much.